Hi everyone, I want to talk to you about dairy because this is something that comes up a lot. If you believe everything on Google, you will think that dairy is an absolute no-no for anyone with acne or acne-prone skin. And I just feel like there's a lot of misinformation out there. People are really confused as to whether or not they should be eating dairy. Is it causing their breakouts? So I just want to take you through my thought process when I'm working with a client and they have acne and we are discussing the role that diet could be having and whether or not they might like to trial removing dairy from the diet or not. First thing to say is I am not an advocate at all of removing whole food groups from the diet long term or even short term, really. I think sometimes people can become so fearful over food, especially when it comes to skin, that I don't want to further feed any of those fears. And it's really very, very rare. I don't think I've ever come across it where people absolutely know that one food equals pimples and equals a breakout, because skin takes a while for spots to appear. So if you eat a food and wake up with a spot the next day, I don't think the science is there to be able to prove that that food did it. It's more likely a culmination of factors that actually were like 2 to 6 weeks prior to that spot appearing. So dairy, why people might think that they need to give it up. The first thing I always like to think about with dairy is, how do you feel when you eat it? So if you are someone who really can identify that you eat dairy and you get digestive symptoms, then that's something that needs to be investigated. And I would be trying to establish if there is some kind of lactose intolerance. So lactose is a sugar that is contained in dairy, and people where their digestive system perhaps isn't working very well, especially if you've got something called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Lactose is supposed to be digested and absorbed in the small intestine, but if you have overgrowth there, then your gut's not going to be able to do that. So when you eat dairy, you're going to get symptoms of bloating. So if you're someone who gets that, then definitely we need to trial removing the dairy, but we then need to do the work to understand why you have got SIBO, right? We don't just remove the food and think the symptoms are all going to go away, because we haven't fixed the root cause. So that's one thing I'm trying to establish, is if there is any kind of digestive symptoms from eating dairy. I'm then going to establish, well, what is the overall hormonal load on this client? You know, are they definitely suffering from some kind of a hormonal acne? And do we need to look at going through some kind of hormonal clearance program, as it were, where we're trying to remove excess hormones that are circulating in the body? Then I might want to take out any additional load on that hormone load. Using the word load a lot, but that's what we're always looking at. We're always looking at the overall balance of things, as opposed to thinking that any particular food is a villain here. So dairy could add an additional hormonal load because of the way that dairy cows are treated. So they are treated with synthetic hormones and growth factors, and they might then be able to pass into your bloodstream and then add to that additional hormonal load, which isn't something you want if you've got acne. So that might be another reason why we trial removing dairy. But again, we want to fix the underlying problem here. We want to establish why there is some kind of hormonal imbalance in the first place, as opposed to just removing the dairy and thinking that that problem is going to go away, because it very rarely happens like that. The other thing I want to be thinking about is establishing how much dairy you're having in your diet. So if you're someone who's having a morning latte, who's having milk with their cereal, who's then having lots of cheese at lunchtime, who's then having ice cream in the evening, then that's quite a lot of dairy coming into the diet, for one thing. And the other thing you want to be establishing is that could be having an impact on your blood sugar balance. So blood sugar dysregulation is a key driver in acne. So we always want to be supporting blood sugar levels. And milk, ice cream, certain dairy products are going to be quite high in sugars because of the way that they are. And so that is going to further feed any dysregulation in your blood sugar levels. And interestingly enough, it's the skinny latte or the skinny cap that's going to actually further feed the dysregulation, as opposed to going full fat, because the skimmed versions of dairy are going to have less fat in there. So they're going to have more sugar, which is going to cause more problems with blood sugar balance. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an insight into why it is that we might consider removing dairy from the diet if you're suffering from acne. Overall, it is an easy food group to be able to trial removing. The nutrients that are inside it are easily replaced with other plant sources. So it's not a drastic thing to be able to remove, it's safe. But like I said, the real thing you want to be doing when you're removing a food from the diet is then identifying what's actually going on internally to make sure you are fixing the root cause, because just taking the food away isn't necessarily going to fix that. It might relieve some of the symptoms, but it's definitely not going to heal your acne, because there's always going to be a number of things that you need to be doing alongside that. If you have any questions, then please do just hit in the comments below, and please share to anyone you know who is suffering with their skin.